One issue I needed to contend with early in my TWA career was military service. Mandatory in those days, I had prepared for this commissions by pursuing a direct commissions as a lieutenant in the army, which required a 2 year commitment. However, after getting enmeshed, enmeshed,
Enmeshed.
enmeshed, I said it right. Uh, Caused to become entangled in something, enmeshed. So you got entangled in this in my career at TWA. And after I had received the direct commission, I decided that I didn't want to accept it and break away for 2 years and instead would enlist in the Army Reserves, which would take me away for only 6 months. After this, I would be obligated to serve one night a week and a weekend each month at the Park Avenue Armory, as well as 2 weeks each summer for the following 6 years at Camp Drum. Let me take a look at Camp Drum. This is crazy. So he had to work or enlist in the military service just to work for this company, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, I might have to reread that part. But I don't know. Are y'all doing that just to work where you work? Man, I don't know, man. Uh, okay. Basically, it's a military base, or is it a marching band camp? Camp Drum. Military base? Fort Drum. They got an Army Fort Drum. What is what is Camp Drum? Okay, U.S. Military Reservation. Camp Drum, officially known as Fort Drum, is a U.S. military reservation located in Jefferson County, New York. Fuck. Well, they're really trying to put you in that. They're really trying to put you in that. Okay, so here we are. Weeks each summer for the following 6 years at Camp Drum in northern New York State. I left TWA to begin my Army training at Fort Dix, New Jersey in May 1964. 6 months away would be no piece of cake. 6 months away would be no piece of cake. But at age 24, with a career on the rise, I decided it was the best option. The likelihood of my being sent overseas was slim. So really quick before we even continue, one issue. I'm gonna just go back to this part because this one part, is he having to do this because he works for this company? One issue I contended with early in TWA career was military service, mandatory in those days. Wow, that's crazy. American, okay, so overseas was going over there was slim. American involvement in the Vietnam War was still pretty modest then. I was prepared to go, but I didn't like the idea of fighting in general or fighting this war in particular. As a foot soldier, I had a tough time believing this was a war we could win. I was a patriotic. I was as patriotic as the next guy, but I just didn't like our chances. In addition, I had lost too many friends to that war, including my closest fraternity buddy, Vin Sharello, killed in a DC 3 flight near Hanu during a U.S. intelligence operation. Those 6 months turned almost all my routines upside down. It left me looking at almost everything in new ways. I was surprised to discover that I was a very flexible person, which I didn't know at the time, and which my critics will line up to argue is no longer the case. I had some trouble dealing with the rows of open toilets in the latrine, 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 a toilet or outhouse, uh, in the latrine. But I even got used to those in time. In all, the army helped instill a certain discipline in my daily life, making me far more conscious about diet and exercise in the limits I could place on my body. I used to look forward to the drills that soldiers dreaded on our long forced marches, loaded down with full packs. I distracted myself from the pain by planning my next stock move or charting my future course at TWA. But nothing in the Army Reserves prepared me for what I found when I returned to the office. Fort Dix had taken me out of the loop during a pivotal time of reorganization at the company. For one thing, the executive headquarters had moved from the 2.5 floors where I started to more than a dozen floors in the Burroughs building at 605 3rd Avenue. Suddenly, we were in a vast corporate space with the bureaucracy to match. The old TWA was small and personal. The new TWA was a slow-footed giant. Even the focus on my job had changed, and I soon felt like a highly paid bean counter. Highly paid bean counter. We gotta see what bean counter means. What is that? What reference is that? An accountant is a, yeah, I'm saying bean counter. What do y'all think a bean counter is, bro? Not like physically count beans, but yeah. What does it mean? This is an informal and often disapproving term used to describe an accountant or someone responsible for managing a company's financial affairs. A bean counter. Uh, Most of my time was devoted to a complicated lawsuit that TWA had brought against Howard Hughes, its majority shareholder, whose shares were locked up in a voting trust held by the airline's creditors. The company was alleging gross mismanagement during the last 10 years of his TWA stewardship. I had a tough time with this case, not just because it was up to me to calculate all the alleged damage, some of them pretty far fetched, uh, chiefly, but also and chiefly because I felt warmly toward a man who had done as much as Charles Lindbergh to fuel the American public's fascination with commercial aviation before he became the eccentric billionaire and recluse he is remembered as today. Hughes was a pioneer. His love of flying was infectious, and in 1939, uh, through his Hughes Tool Company, he used some of his vast resources to purchase large blocks of TWH stock. 5 years later, he set a new transcontinental speed record by flying a TWA Lockheed Constellation from Burbank, California to Washington, D.C. in 7 hours, which effectively opened the door to nonstop flights across the United States to a small boy growing up beneath the approach path to LaGuardia. Hughes was a true hero. So that's I didn't know Hughes was big dog like that. You feel what I'm saying? So, stay tuned for more of this book. Unlocking.